is a color script for the show, and the color script was started out by Brad Hicks, and then as we went through the show, we would make adjustments according to story changes and changes called for by the director as well. But this gives us basically a feel for how the film is going to move along as far as the color feel of it, the mood. It's brighter usually, and more colorful where the moments are happier and lighter. The darker moments in the script usually represent maybe sadder points in the film or can be dangerous. But you can also, during their big escape, you can punch up the reds and make it more dramatic that way. It can be more colorful. So the color script is just basically a way of showing the director and everyone how the film's going to flow just from a color sensibility. This is the color key of the farm. What we do is we'll take the images from the color script, which are pretty small, and we'll do a larger painting then of that location, and we call it a color key. And then you're able to go in with much more detail and work out what the house is going to look like, the ground, the dirt path, the sky, the fields, whatever you need to do, you can work that out in much more detail.
And Chuck here is a farm boy, so we made sure that he got to design this set initially. Some of the other stuff, additional stuff, was done by Michael Spooner, some of the final stuff. But also another very important aspect of this set is that it had to ring, since this is a prodigal son story, it had to ring like this. This is like a heaven, a metaphor for what heaven was like. And that's why we added the sheets blowing in the wind and everything, because we just felt like once we added those, it all of a sudden had a very peaceful, tranquil kind of feel. Okay, note to kids, never go inside trailers when there's a tornado coming. There's always stories on the news about not doing this thing that we do in the show. Very important. To find a ditch, duck down somewhere, that's just what you gotta do. Or go to your basement if you don't live in a trailer. But this was supposed to be this is one of the Brad Hicks's color keys that he had handled, and again, this was supposed to be a nice moody moment in the film, and this was supposed to be right before the big stressful tornado comes in.
This is Munchieland, and again, this is another color key by Brad Hicks, and we just really wanted a fanciful, colorful location that really it almost looked like you could probably eat just about anything in the place. It looks like candy and upside ice cream cones and marshmallows and just anything fun and bright. And it really doesn't. It's a very nice contrast to the farm at the beginning of the show, and it's just Joe had a great time designing the location, and the color just really brought it to life.
Went through a lot of passes too. At one point we had thatched buildings and we were like, no, that looks way too much like the original Wizard of Oz. And then we went to mushroom buildings, and it looked like some reject version of the Smurf village. And it just we just decided not to go with the little mushroom place. And then the script really in the end directed what it was going to look like, and as it should have from the very beginning. Shame on us. And we decided, okay, well, let's just make all the buildings. The real challenge was like, how do we make this look like a place you could eat, but not look too much like Candyland? We did something like that in the Larry Boy film, and and we had to just have a lot of fun thinking of things like that you could eat, that you would munch on. I don't know if any of you munch on marshmallows, but well, if you do, we got marshmallows in here for you. This was a flat that was painted. Originally, there was a painting done by Brad Hicks of it for a color key, and then I gave it to my old buddy Michael Spooner to paint it up for production, and he had a really interesting method on it, and really kind of captured, I think, was what is the beauty shot for the film, where we see Haas for the first time. You know, it's a great shot. I think you're going to see it on the cover, and you know, he had a very simple, almost graphic style. And that's another thing about this film is we never really tried to hide the fact that these are paintings in the backgrounds behind the characters. I mean, it does mesh a little bit better than, say, the live action old Wizard of Oz film did, where the characters were obviously standing in front of painted backgrounds and they didn't try to make it look super realistic. But we tried to do the same kind of thing for this film. We just said, well, you know, if they're looking at what looks like a painting, it's okay in this film. And here's that location. As we get closer to it, it's obviously a lot more saturated now that we're like right in front of it. You know, we just tried to set up the color mood that this is the establishing shot of that last wonderful world. The interesting little trick that kind of happens is while you're in the park, you don't really see, or you only get slight indications of this big roller coaster, this gigantic one that goes around the whole park, because there's another roller coaster within the park. So if you pause the DVD player as they're flying out on the trailer at the end, you'll kind of see how the actual layout of the park actually looks. Actually, this big green roller coaster that goes behind them actually winds in and out of the park. So I eventually figured out how we could make this roller coaster that goes behind, looks like it goes behind the whole park, actually weaves around in the park. So there's a little bit of logic to it, but it's also a little bit of guesswork. And, you know, in the end, you just ask what looks good on the screen, and I think it looks pretty good. Here's an example, just real quick, of how we use clouds in the film. These were just some clouds, and each one of them's on a different layer, and they're all hand painted to look like clouds that would move in, and they each imitate just real cloud movement. But this is, again, most of the stuff in VeggieTales is all hand painted stuff.
The nice thing about putting the clouds on different layers is that you can move the foreground clouds at a faster speed than the ones in the back or in the middle, and that kind of gives the illusion of depth